Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a spectacular success story. Authorities in Nigeria celebrate news that it's shaken off the deadly Ebola virus. It's a rare victory as West African nations continue to battle the spread of the epidemic that's killed thousands. Also, Cairo and Khartoum say they'll pull together to help Libya battle Islamist militants. A pledge that comes on the final day of the Sudanese president's visit to Egypt. And Somaliland is still pushing for what it believes is its rightful place on the map. It declared its independence from troubled Somalia in 1991, but is still not internationally recognized as a nation. Our correspondents have been to meet some of those who call it home. First up, on Monday, officials in Abuja broke out into applause at news that Nigeria is now officially Ebola-free. Medics have declared the country's containment of the spread of the deadly virus a spectacular success story. After Senegal, Nigeria is the second African nation to have shaken off the disease in this year's epidemic, a feat that raises hopes of a way out of the health crisis.
Ebola still rages in West Africa, but Nigeria has proven it is possible to contain the disease. No new cases have been reported in that country for 6 weeks. That's twice the incubation period for the virus. So the World Health Organization has officially declared that Nigeria is Ebola-free.
This is a spectacular success story that shows to the world that Ebola can be contained. But we must be clear that we only won a battle. The war will only end when West Africa is also declared free of Ebola.
In contrast to the thousands of deaths in the worst-hit countries, Nigeria suffered only a handful of cases, even though the virus arrived in the hugely crowded city of Lagos. Authorities were aggressive in dealing with the outbreak from the beginning. Every suspected case was immediately isolated. Health workers meticulously tracked down and monitored anyone who had contact with a patient. Meanwhile, the Civil Aviation Authority quickly introduced passenger screening at airports, and the government launched a massive public education campaign. The president praised Nigerians for helping to stop the virus in its tracks.
Nigerians become mindful. Even friends stop embracing. There's no magic government would have used to solve that problem. No president or state governors will claim any credit. The credits will go to the ordinary Nigerians for the cooperation.
The battle in Nigeria is won, but the death toll in the 3 most affected countries, Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone, continues to rise. It's now reached 4,500 people.
Well, this week, EU foreign ministers are in Luxembourg for an emergency Ebola response meeting. They're hoping to raise around $1.3 billion to help African nations at the heart of the outbreak, and have decided not to stop flights from West Africa. The epidemic, though, has seen the continent isolated on other fronts. South Africa is refusing to step in as emergency host for next January's African Cup of Nations and said that it is not the continent's big brother. The Confederation for African Football approached 7 countries after Morocco asked for a postponement because of the Ebola epidemic. Well, despite Nigeria announcing a desperately hoped-for truce with Boko Haram last week, dozens of suspected Islamist fighters have been killed in clashes over the weekend. At least 6 attacks across the northeastern states of Borno and Adamawa have been blamed on the insurgents. Soldiers around the town of Damboa say that they killed 25 attacking militants late Sunday. We're joined now by Mania Dan Ali. He's the editor of the Daily Trust newspaper in Abuja. Mania, thanks for speaking to us. Now, the attacks haven't stopped. Boko Haram still hasn't officially commented on the truce. Just how credible is this deal the government's striking in Chad starting to look?
Well, it's beginning to look more and more cagey. A lot of Nigerians who have from the beginning been not too celebratory about it are beginning to say, well, we told you so. And the government line is to say that possibly there are many factions of Boko Haram. The one that they may have dealt with has spelled out this cessation of hostilities, but the real people in charge of these towns and villages are actually creating more mayhem. Over 100 people were said to have been killed in a town called Abadam on the border with Chad and Niger. And also the Nigerian military is saying it has killed at least 24 of Boko Haram fighters when they attacked a town in Borno State called Dambua.
Thank you very much. Mane Danali, the editor-in-chief of Nigeria's Daily Trust newspaper. Well, in other news, South Sudan's president and rebel chief, Riek Machar, have accepted mutual responsibility for the 10-month civil war in which thousands of people have been killed. The admission is part of a deal signed by both in Tanzania as the two rivals met for the first time since a ceasefire was signed in Ethiopia in August. Several ceasefires have fallen through since having been struck this year. Sudanese leader Omar al Bashir finished up a 2-day visit to Egypt on Monday. The two nations have not seen eye to eye on a number of issues in the past. That includes a border dispute and Egypt's opposition to Ethiopia's construction of a huge dam across the Nile. But President al-Sisi said that Egypt and Sudan will start working more closely in tackling Libya's security concerns. Sharif Abdel Kudus brings us more.
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that Egypt would work with Libya to support the Libyan would work with Sudan to support the Libyan National Army against Islamist-led militias in Libya in a bid, he said, to restore stability to the country. The rising chaos in Libya is a top foreign policy concern for Egypt, which shares a long border with Libya and has seen cross-border attacks by militants. The Egyptian government has made no secret of its support for the newly elected Libyan government, which is based in the city of Tobruk, and has said it would train and arm its forces. For its part, the Libyan government has accused Sudan of arming terrorist groups in Libya, a charge that Khartoum denies. But Sisi said that Egypt and Sudan would coordinate efforts to support state institutions in Libya to restore stability, primarily the military, and they called for dialogue between all political factions in Libya.
Well, the family of former Madagascar President Marc Ravalomanana called today for him to take part in the national reconciliation process. He's been under house arrest since returning from exile in South Africa last week. Nicholas Romain has more.
It's a clear U-turn. On Friday, Marc Ravalomanana's wife asked the Malagasy to rise up and free the country. But on Monday, her tone was far more peaceful.
The moment has now come for all the people of Madagascar to come together, to talk to each other, and to show respect. This is a time for national reconciliation.
Her comments came as the presidency announced that Marc Ravalomanana would not be expelled and that he could take part in a national reconciliation process. Some believe there should be a summit with the 4 former presidents and rivals, Ange Radzoel, Marc Ravalomanana, Didier Ratsirac and Albert Zaf, as all those who were in exile have now returned to Madagascar. For the moment, tensions are still running high. On Saturday, a demonstration with some 300 supporters of Ravalomanana was dispersed by the police. Ever since he was toppled from power in 2009, he'd been living in exile in South Africa. He surprised many when he returned unannounced to the island last week. But after just a few hours, he was put under house arrest in the town of Diego Suarez, in the extreme north of the country.
Well, Somaliland says it's a separate nation to Somalia. Officially, most of the world does not agree. But people living in the self-declared independent state say they're proud of their country and will keep pushing for their place on the map. Our correspondents have been to meet some expats who returned to make a home in Hargeisa.
Reviving Somali culture, its cuisine, its decor and its music. This is the goal of Sarah, a 45-year-old singer who returned to Somaliland a few months ago to open a restaurant.
I spent 23 years in France. I was a cleaning lady for more than 10 years. Then I said to myself, go back home. Now I create jobs. I'm reviving a culture that was totally forgotten.
Sarah employs 19 people, a major achievement after years of saving money from cleaning jobs in Europe. But there are big challenges in a self-declared country that hasn't been recognised by the international community.
Being in an unrecognised country means I have to not only pay my employees, but also for my own security. We pay a lot of taxes so that the country can run properly. It's just the way it is. If Somaliland could borrow money or be recognised by the United Nations, we wouldn't have these issues.
Returning home has also created challenges in Sarah's private life. Her two daughters, who came with her from France, are weekly boarders at the American International School.
As a single mother, I have to put them in boarding school because I'm never there. I'm at my restaurant all the time. Being a woman, you have to be present. This is a constraint. If you need a loan, for example, you can't because you're a woman. Being a woman is a challenge here.
And it's not easy for these teenagers who still see France as their first home.
It's difficult to hide all the time, not to wear outfits that show the body, to wear the veil. It's a whole different world and it's difficult to adapt.
Like Sarah, thousands of Somalilanders decide each year to return, building new lives and helping their homeland in its bid for international recognition.
Well, that wraps up African News for me for now. Stay with us, so more news and headlines from around the world coming up.
What do you want from your news website? France24.com, giving you easier access to information and faster for a unique experience. France24.com, the international news website.